Good afternoon. Welcome to INSA's 8A and the IC, Big Opportunities for Small Businesses. Before we begin, we'd like to share a video from our sponsor.
National security depends on staying ahead of the threat. Booz Allen's intelligence experts and innovators push the technical edge for today's mission and tomorrow's challenges. So together, we can combat adversaries, identify risks, analyze information, and apply emerging technologies for next-generation capabilities. When national security depends on you, we're here to propel your mission forward.
Please welcome INSA President Suzanne WilsonHeckenberger.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. INSA is pleased to host this panel discussion about the business opportunities for 8A companies in the intelligence and national security sector. We know that thousands of small 8A businesses already play a vital role in supporting the national security mission. Their agile and innovative approaches help our intelligence and national security agencies tackle some of our toughest challenges. But there is still much to be done to boost their participation in the intelligence and national security market. To that end, we recently launched our 8A National Security Showcase with the goal of fostering business partnerships between intelligence community agencies, prime contractors, and 8A businesses. Taking place virtually on June 8th and 9th, nearly 24 8A companies will be invited to deliver Shark Tank-style presentations to key public and private decision makers in the intelligence and national security community. More details, as well as the application form, can be found on our website, insaonline.org, as well as in the document library on the right side of the screen. Ultimately, we are looking to build awareness, build relationships, and to build a stronger, more diverse and resilient community. Today's conversation will help kickstart that effort. Before we get started, let me make a few housekeeping notes. First, we hope to make this as interactive as possible. Please submit your questions to the Q&A box on the right side of your screen. We will try to get to as many as possible. I encourage you to identify both your name and your organization. Second, we are pleased to welcome members of the press to the call today. As a reminder, this program will be on the record. And finally, I would like to thank our program sponsor, Booz Allen Hamilton, for their vital support of this very important program. Now, it is my pleasure to welcome Maisha Glover, Senior Vice President, National Security Group for Booz Allen Hamilton, and a member of INSA's Advisory Committee. Maisha, over to you.
Thank you, Suzanne. I am so excited to be here today. On behalf of Booz Allen Hamilton, I would like to thank INSA for hosting today's event as the primer for what's to come in June as part of the 8.8 Showcase. The strength and uniqueness of our intelligence community is found in the diversity, equity, and inclusion for all. Our purpose-driven mission requires us to take the high ground with speed and agility to be ahead of the threats. That's what drives us to be innovative. Our collaboration with small businesses ensures that we are providing the optimal talent and technology in support of the intelligence community mission. Our desire to achieve the client mission also enables our government clients to meet their goals to support small businesses. Events like this, where we can come together to cultivate partnerships with innovators and share ideas on best practices, will ultimately propel the mission forward. Even through the past year of disruptions, the pace of technology in our world continues to accelerate. Our nation as a whole needs to be ready with cutting-edge solutions to predict, protect, and mitigate risk to our national security. Let's leverage the power of our human innovative spirit through ingenuity and collaborative efforts to deliver the outcomes our nation needs. Thank you to the innovative leadership on this panel and to INSA for hosting this amazing event. It is now my pleasure to introduce the moderator, Howard Weitzner, Chair of INSA's Acquisition Management Council. With more than 25 years of experience serving the U.S. government and private sector, Howard is recognized in this industry as a business leader for business strategy, sales management, and acquisition innovation. Over to you, Howard.
Great. Thank you, Maisha, for that introduction. Thank you to Booz Allen for sponsoring today's event. As Maisha said, today really is about the start of a conversation. A conversation will start today, continue forward, but then looking forward to the June event, as Suzanne mentioned. And what really is appealing to me about today's conversation is the opportunity to bring ideas together and the role that 8A companies have with that. We have 4 panelists with us today. Let's start just with some, start by briefly introducing them, and then we'll get right to the questions. Christian Gonzalez is the CEO and co-founder of Wovenware, an organization dedicated to the development of business applications with a focus on predictive analytics and the use of artificial intelligence models. He's also a member of the board of directors of the Puerto Rico IT Cluster, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting the integration, creation, sustainability of the IT sector in Puerto Rico. We have Karen Mumford from the Defense Intelligence Agency. Karen is the director of the Small Business Program Office at DIA. In this role, she also oversees DIA's Mentor Protege program, their 8A program, and subcontracts management. Previously, Ms. Mumford was the Resource Management Office Chief in DIA Science and Technology Directorate, as well as a Senior Contracts Manager for a large defense contractor earlier in her career. Also from industry, we have Dr. James DeBardeleben, who is the President and CEO of IDSys Technologies, an organization that delivers software solutions for big data, social network analysis, analytic workflow modernization, and interoperability to DoD, IC, and Homeland Security customers. And we have another government lead with us, Dale Rainey. Dale currently serves as the director of the Office of Small Business Programs at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, NGA. Prior to joining NGA, Mr. Rainey served in the Air Force for 23 years and spent time as a contracting officer at CIA. So we have an excellent group of folks today. I envision this conversation to be industry perspective, government perspective, and I think you're going to see there's strong alignment between the two. As a reminder, please post your questions in the question chat window, and we'll try to get to as many of them as possible. I'm going to get us started while folks are posing questions. I want to start with, from a government perspective, Karen and Dale, can you just briefly summarize what is the 8A designation and how does the government use that designation?
So Dale, I'll go ahead and get started. I will tell you, there's a lot of excitement when we hear that a company is certified as 8A. The reason I say that is the FAR in the CFR is set up so that we can do direct awards with a limited process. It's one of the easiest and most streamlined processes to get a contract in place. And that really is the biggest benefit from a government perspective. Dale, I'll let you add on to that from an NGA.
Thank you, Karen. As Karen stated, it allows agencies, federal agencies, to award contracts on a sole source basis without having to compete. What I would say, though, is the 8A program is excellent for small businesses. It helps teach, train, mold companies to learn how to do business with the government. The program typically lasts for 9 years, and so I recommend that everyone maximize the opportunity while in the program. You'll be afforded lots of opportunities while in the program, opportunities to work on other efforts with large businesses as a subcontractor possibly, or possibly starting a joint venture with another small business. And so it affords lots of opportunity. And NGA uses 8A companies along with other socioeconomic companies as well.
The other thing that I'll add is that the Small Business Administration manages the program. strongly recommend you get to know your business opportunity specialist, because they are out there advocating for you, not just in the Intel community, but across the government.
Great. Thank you both for that. From an industry perspective, James and Christian, you've both been through the 8A designation process. Can you talk a little bit about what that process looks like in the 8A designation?
I'll go ahead and start then. All right. Thank you again, Howard, for the warm introduction. As you said, I'm James DeBartolebe, and I'm the founder and CEO of IvySys. We're a graduate actually of the 8A program. I think we graduated maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I started IvySys actually 15 years ago to really focus on threat awareness problems. And why I say that is because the 8A program is not a guarantee for winning any business. You're not guaranteed anything, but you really, really have to develop a niche capability, because the 8A program can really help you develop your business. It's a business development program, but you have to have a reason for the government to work with you. So it means you have to have a differentiating capability that you're pitching to the government. And for the IC, and in particularly the intelligence community, they're really always looking for solutions to actual mission problems. And those mission problems are oftentimes very difficult to know actually what the problem is unless you're engaged in that community. So you can actually leverage this program to get to help develop relationships with large prime contractors or directly with the government. And that sole source vehicle sometimes is that ticket. But you always start with your capabilities. And once you got some interest in your company, then you kind of bring that in at the end and say, hey, I got this sole source vehicle that you can actually leverage to get to us a lot easier too. So that's really kind of how we focus on it, because there's a lot of challenges getting into the community, from getting facility clearances. And once you have those clearances, how do you attract talent that are clear to join your company? Because there's lots of other companies. So this is not even just about 8A companies, it's about a small business entering the national security or defense marketplace. It can be a challenge. So having that niche capability that differentiates your company can help attract both talent and developing relationships to help you grow your company.
Yeah. And from my perspective, I'm Christian Gonzalez. I'm the CEO and founder of Wovenware. We do computer vision models for the intelligence community, particularly the NGA, as a sub to Maxar. But what I wanted to say related to what James was mentioning, I think it's more of a timing thing. You need to make sure that you request your 8A certification at the proper time, because if not, you're just going to waste years of your certification. I think James and I had a conversation a couple of days ago, and it was true that I think we missed a couple of our years as an 8A company. But the other thing is you have to be ready in terms of your capabilities, and that's what James was mentioning. If you're not ready with your capabilities and haven't asked or solicited your 8A certification, it's not going to happen in 2-3 days. It's going to take a couple of months probably to get your 8A certification. So there's a timing issue. You have to make sure that both things, capabilities and your readiness to ask for the 8A certification, to synchronize in a way. So I think that's really important, and we can talk a little bit about that more through our conversation.
Absolutely. And Christian and James, both having been through the process yourselves, what would you say to a small business who's interested in going through that process? How do they get started?
Well, it's I'll start. Really to piggyback on what Christian was just saying, the first thing you want to do is figure out when is the right time to enter this program. In my experience, I had a lot of experience in the defense and intelligence community before I started the company. I didn't actually have a military background, but I worked at the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab, where I managed special operations, ISR programs. So I had some relationships already there, and I had management experience. So to my excitement, I was able to get a waiver. So I was able to enter the program a year in business, which is great if you're ready to leverage that vehicle. And so I would say that I probably wasted 4 or 5 years of this program just because when I got in, I probably got in too early. And just because you can get in doesn't mean that you should. So the timing on that is critically important. And also in terms of the process, I mean, it's like any other sort of application that you're filling out. You need to actually have your company have to have some level of experience, some financials. I was in a program quite a while ago and went through that process some time ago. I think that at that time you had to have a business plan, something of that nature. But I think most people can get through the process or the overall mechanics of it. It's just the strategy of how you use that program and when is the right time to enter. Because oftentimes it might be best to wait till you've been in business 5 or 6 years before you enter that program. So you actually have relationships. So when you start, you know exactly how you're going to leverage it, what companies are going to be your teammates, and you get that whole, you can leverage all of it. Because not like right now, I could probably leverage it really well because I would know how to use it. But guess what? I'm out of the program. So
yeah. And I think the bottom line is, remember that this is a vehicle for contracting officers to get to you, right? So I talk to Dale and say, hey, Dale, I have this amazing technology. And Dale says, hey, this is amazing. This is great. I want it. So how do I get to you? And you're a small business. You're trying to understand what Dale is saying. And I mean, he's going to go at you and he's going to say, well, do you have a GSA schedule? Do you have do you have an active contract? Do you have an IDIQ? Do you have an 8A certification? Maybe we can either sole source this, or maybe it's a competitive RFP, but it gives you a way to get to your procurement officers and how to sell your products and services. So this is the advantage of having an 8A in general. How do you get it? I mean, I think now is easier than ever, probably. James and I probably had to build binders of documents with a bunch of information. Now I think you can do it online with the SBA. But there are certain organizations like the PTACs of the Department of Defense has what they call PTACs. They provide assistance in building your case for 8A or HubZone. And then I think the SBA funds what they call the SBDTCs. These are other organizations that do the same. So there's help out there to get your 8A certification. That shouldn't be an impediment for you to start. At least talk to those people to get you the information and understand what their requirements are, because there are requirements. It's not a slam dunk. I mean, there are things you have to do and things you have to show that you can do to get the certification.
Great, thank you for that. Karen, in your role, I understand you run the 8A program at DIA. What do small business office, what do you do in terms of conducting outreach to 8A small businesses?
So we participate in a ton of industry outreach events. We are always on camera in front of people trying to find new companies. I will tell you the best way to reach us, it's easy. Send us an email with your capability statement, tell us what you do. And the reason I say that is that we have created a process for oral presentations. So we consider this to be market research. And what we do is we bring in 3 or 4 companies for an actual requirement. What you would do as the 8A is present your capabilities to meet our requirement, And right from that, we go to the direct award process, meaning we select one company and we go right to negotiating a contract. It does not get any easier than that. Each year, we have about 10 to 12 new 8As that come into the agency. It's a great opportunity, and you really want to be able to get our focus. I did provide a handout that talks about capability statements and what to include in that, also the email address on how to send it. But I do have to give a quick plug to James and Christian. You guys hit the nail on the head when you talked about focus on mission, because that's what we need to hear, and also timing. We have a protege in our agency that just got their 8A at the end of FY19. She has already been awarded 6 8A contracts across the IC and federal government. She timed it just right to the point where in year 1, she is incredibly successful. She has 8 more years to go. So
great. And for those who have dialed into the program, you'll see on the right side of your screen under the GoToWebinar panel, a handout section. And the handout that Karen was referring to is listed there, DIA Office of Small Business Programs. It's a PowerPoint. So at DIA, it starts by the 8A reaches out and says, we'd like to get to know you. Dale, what about from an NGA perspective? How would an 8A organization get engaged with NGA?
Similarly to Karen, again, we are big on requesting capability statements, and we take those, and if any efforts come up that match or we believe that that company could assist in a specific effort, we will provide that to the program office, and they will review it, and if they're interested or have a quick need to turn around and put it on contract, then we'll reach out to them, and we'll possibly be able to work with that company through a sole source environment. But NGA has also, I think, which is a huge benefit to companies, we have what you call Demo Day, and it occurs every other Wednesday, and we invite companies to come in and present to all of NGA. All the program offices participate. They're the folks with the money, and we allow you all to convey your capabilities and what your company is capable of. And what that does is you're presenting in front of all of NGA. If any of those program offices are interested in your technology, or if we're interested in furthering, advancing your technology, we'll reach out to partner, or we'll reach out to hopefully be able to put you on contract. And so we too participate in a lot of 8A events through outreach. We actually we had an industry day for March, I think it was for March, NGA did. It wasn't specifically targeted for 8A companies, but it was for all of industry. But I intend or hope or plan to host events specifically for socioeconomic companies throughout the year. And so my preference is to wait till we open up and host that physically. But I recognize that as time goes on, the year's quickly passing, and so we may look at doing something virtually this year.
So we just created Introduction to DIA for Small Business. Again, like Dale was saying, it's not for one specific socioeconomic category, but this is set up for companies new to DIA, new to the Intel community, trying to help get information out about us. So being the IC, we're very closed, we don't like to talk, and this is our first attempt. We did set it up as a virtual event, and we post announcements on Beta SAM as courses come up. Right now, we're having 2 events each month. We'll increase that if there's the need for it.
Great, thank you. Just wrapping up our section on getting started. A question for you, Dale, since you had some previous experience working at CIA. The question from Rita Sampson is, are only DoD elements participating in the 8A program? What about the rest of the IC that are not part of DoD?
So fortunately, unfortunately, they have and use different authorities, and they don't have a requirement or small business goals to or partner with small businesses. I will say to the maximum extent possible. The NRO, CIA, for the most part, or the agencies that don't participate or have a mandate to participate, but they do use small businesses to the maximum extent possible. And so, although there's no oversight body to ensure that they're meeting the small business goals, they do go out and try to seek those small businesses in various areas.
Great, thank you. James, question for you regarding how does this work from, how have you experienced this? And Christian, I'll ask you for a follow-up afterwards. How does an 8A business such as yourself determine, where to focus your energies, right? You're a small organization, you have business development people, you're also trying to run the business and deliver the work for the government at the same time. What was your process in determining where to focus your energies in terms of which agencies to really bring forward your capabilities and to engage with?
That's a great question, Howard. From our standpoint, we are a small business. We're a very innovative company. We focused in the R&D space, working with agencies such as DARPA, DIAS&T, in the past. But how do you find, we have limited time, and writing these proposals can be very time consuming. So when we write them, we have to have a pretty good idea that we have a chance of winning. So what do we do? Well, it's pretty simple. You got to talk to customers. You really have to engage with, whether it be the large systems integrators or the government themselves, because the challenge is when the solicitations come out and they tell you, like, this is our problem. Most people don't know specifically what their problem is, and you have to talk to them to tease out that real problem, because really innovating is about coming up with a novel solution to a very specific problem, but you got to nail the problem right, such that you can nail the solution. So from our standpoint, we really focus on, we'll narrow it down to an overall agency, but we have to get on the ground and pitch our ideas to customers just to get feedback before we go off and write anything. We really have to engage with the customer. Christian.
Great. Christian, anything to add to that?
Well, I think it's important to highlight a little bit. James' company and when we had this conversation, we come from different places as a company. He comes from the IC community. He had a personal clearance, and talking to customers maybe was easier for him because he came from that community. In my case, my company comes from commercial. I didn't have any clearance. So from my perspective, it was easier to match my capabilities to a prime that needed what I had to offer and go through that route. And that's a very long route. It's very different. It took me like 3 years to get my FCL for my company. It's a long time, but it happened, right? So so from my perspective, it was easier to align my capabilities to a prime and work with that prime to get to the IC community. I think there's a lot there that we can discuss, but it goes to show a little bit how, there has to be even more avenues to get it to the IC community, but both of ours are very different, right? Yeah. And it was a journey to get here.
So the piggyback, a customer to me sometimes is the prime, because oftentimes to get into a new, especially in the national security or intelligence community, it can be almost impossible to actually talk directly to the government sometimes. So your only entry point is the large system integrators, and matching your oftentimes, selling to them. But being able to match, figure out which of those companies are complementary or to your skill set, or that you can add value to their service offerings is the key in trying to figure out where they are. And then after you work with them for a while, you may have an opportunity even to prime yourself in those agencies.
So picking up on that, right? So I myself, I'm part of a large business. Working with 8A companies is a priority for us. Karen, question to you. As a large business interested in working with 8As, right? Does your agency make available to large businesses a list of 8A businesses to help connect the dots?
So I can tell you, I intentionally stay away from teaming at any level. We will frequently get questions such as that, or we'll get questions from small businesses saying, who are the best primes? I have to stay far, far away from that. But I will tell you, there are a lot of associations out there. There's a lot of information from SBA that can be shared with regards to who is out there and available. The reason I stay away is I don't want to have two companies think that they have to get together because I said so. So that's why I really do stay far away from teaming recommendations.
Dale, I assume the same for NGA as well, correct?
I look at it a little differently. I think it's hugely beneficial, and we do not today have a listing of vendors that are within the footprint. I'm in the process of trying to gather that listing. We get, I don't know, 6, 7 questions a week on who's the prime, who's managing what effort. And so it's not us partnering or suggesting or recommending a particular partner or a small business to go work with a specific large business. It's just making a list available of those companies that are within the footprint. And so I think that is beneficial. And we hope to post that to our small business website at NGA. But what I would add to that is that, again, we are going through the process of making that known, but we do have some sensitivity of making publicly available some of the vendors. We've got some companies where the affiliations are sensitive, and so we need to make sure that we don't cross any disclosure agreements that may be in place. So that's the vetting piece that we're going through today. But I do think that it's hugely beneficial letting everyone know, especially small businesses, know who's within the footprint and or what program that they're working on. We publish a future business opportunities listing that lists all of the efforts that are coming out for the fiscal year. And so they may be interested in either partnering or submitting a proposal as a prime vendor, or they may be interested in partnering as a sub. And so this gives them the tools that they need. One last thing, if I could piggyback on the Christian and James comment on the clearance and facility clearance piece. NGA has a small business security clearance program in place. And again, we've recognized that there are various barriers to entry. And so we think that this is one of the biggest barriers for entry into the IC, which is a security clearance. Now, granted, I do agree a facility clearance is required, but we have the ability to sponsor companies, small businesses that don't have a clearance. They've got a technology or unique skill or service that they can provide and deliver to the government. And if our program offices are interested in sponsoring that company, we, the small business office, can sponsor them through a personnel clearance and allow them to get a security clearance up to the TS/SCI level, again, to be able to have open communication and dialogue. If our agency is interested in pursuing that technology, we would then assist and sponsor them for facility clearance.
Thank you for that. And to my understanding, but y'all correct me if it's incorrect, that that the existence of such a program and how that would operate would vary agency to agency.
So our agency, for the most part, will not sponsor a facility clearance. In my 4.5 years in this role, I've seen it happen one time. It took over a year for that process to go through, and that was pushing it. So we actually recommend starting as a subcontractor, letting a prime sponsor you, and it's a much faster process. The other thing I want to say is that we also will share the list of primes. So we have quite a few IDIQ contracts. Our Site 3 vehicle was just awarded last week. There are 144 primes for that vehicle. It's going to be very busy the rest of this year going into FY22. Once we get that list together, we are more than happy to share that with industry. We just want to stay away from teaming companies together as you're forming and norming your team.
Understood. Thank you for that clarification. Christian, you spoke previously about the FCL, the facility clearance. Did you follow a process similar to what was just discussed, starting as a subcontractor? How did that work for you?
It was a long process, let me tell you that. But I did it through a prime. My prime wanted me to be part of a classified project at the TSSCI level, and that's why it took 3 years. So that's why I was trying to make the point. When you build a company and you have a personal clearance, it's easier to get your facilities clearance through a prime, because at least you are cleared at some level. In my case, I wasn't cleared, my partner wasn't cleared, so the key personnel in the company wasn't cleared. So we submit, well, we can't submit for an FCL. Our prime sponsors us, and then the NGA or the core of each one of the agencies agrees or says yes, and then you start the process, and at some point you have to be personally cleared. And that's what took a long time. It took me 3 years, 2.5, almost 3 years. There's a lot of things in there. I mean, we don't want to get into it, but one of the benefits of working with a prime is, I mean, as a small business, it's very hard to comply with a lot of the requirements, not only of a normal federal agency, but going into the IC, it's still harder, right? So if you go hand in hand with a prime that shows you the way, that teaches you a lot of the things you have to build your security policies and procedures, your insider threat program, your briefings, I mean, there's a bunch of things you have to do. If you do it with a prime, to me, it felt easier, and I mean, you make sure that you're doing things right. That doesn't mean that if you have the ability to do it directly, that you shouldn't do it. Of course you should do it. You see James, he's done perfectly well. But in my case, that I didn't have any experience in the IC community, it was easier to go at it with a prime. They saw the capabilities. We started doing classified work first, and then they said, hey, with your capabilities, I need you to help me out with a classified contract. And then we started the process, and it took quite some time. Actually, I'm coming out right now of my first audit from the DCSA. I'm very happy, as you can see. No, actually, it was very good. This is my binder with all my security stuff. But again, going back, doing business with a prime, to me, was the way to go.
All right, thank you for that. A couple of quick targeted questions, and then we're going to move to our final segment on growth. Dale, you mentioned the NJ Business Opportunities Report. For an 8A or other small business who's interested in seeing that, is there an unclassified version they can access?
Yes. So we partner with the NRO on the Acquisition Research Center website, web portal. and we post classified efforts there. But we also have an unclassified portal that anybody can sign up to. And we've got an unclassified version of the future business opportunities post.
Great, thank you.
If you don't have access to what I think it's westfields.org, you could just shoot me an email and I can send it to you.
Okay, great. So if they need a link to it, send you an email, and then they can get registered for the unclassified art. Excellent. And then, Karen, you mentioned the Site 3 primes, the 144. When do you anticipate that list of Site 3 primes to be published, and where might it be published?
So full disclosure, I had to recuse myself from this because the company that my husband works for, they're actually a prime on the vehicle. So I found out over the weekend that this was released. It's going to take us a minute to get that list together because we really do work with the primes so that we have emails that are useful for industry. We intentionally have them give us an email to receive proposals as well as receive emails from potential small business partners. Eventually, this will make it onto DIA's website, but again, it's going to take them a little bit to get their site up. So this is actually a good example of how each agency operates differently. Dale had mentioned that they use the NRO ARC at Chantilly. We tend to use the NSA ARC for our classified requirements. We also use beta.sam for most of our unclassified requirements. So if I were to give a piece of advice, make sure you target the agencies that your core capabilities fit to, and then reach out to those agencies to figure out how they operate, because we are all different.
That's a great point. Thank you for reiterating that. There was a short discussion earlier about large business and 8A interaction and engagement. Just to put Karen, something that you said, industry associations such as INSA create a great opportunity to network with large and small businesses. So events like this are a perfect opportunity for that, particularly when we can be in person. Those create even better opportunities. And then Dale, you previously mentioned industry days, right? If an industry day is where companies interested in a particular opportunity are coming together, they're a great opportunity for dating and networking as well, in terms of large and small businesses being able to get connected. Let's move to a section about growth. Christian and James, both of you having been in the program, right? Your small businesses, you enter the program, you start to see some success. How do you pivot to then growing? And as you approach graduating, so James's question is coming to you.
Yep.
What does that look like in terms of you graduate, then what?
Well, great question again. And so when I was talking about the 8A program earlier, about it being a business development program, that's exactly how you have to view it. And your goal while you're in that program is to get off of all these 8A contracts almost as soon as you can, because that is, your ability to survive and grow after this program is that you need to be learning how to win either just full small business set aside or full and open types of contracts afterwards. And the way you do that is product differentiation or service differentiation. To give you an example, like our company, we're a big data AI company. We provide solutions for specific national security problems, like for solutions such as developing AI tools for detecting or countering cyber-enabled influence operations. That's a very specific problem. And so you have to be kind of thinking about that in terms of what is it that your company can do that's different, that's a very specific, that you can get into these agencies with, or get in with a large systems integrator and then grow around that. You really have to show and build that trust that you got this problem, you can execute on it, and then start scaling around that. You'll get other opportunities to expand, but you can't come in and say, all right, I did all these different things in the 8A program, but I didn't really master anything. And then it's going to be really difficult to compete when you get out. So it's really, the sort of the secret to actually growing, but also building a valuable company that has value after you get out of the program, because these are set aside kinds of contracts, they don't have the same sort of exit value if you're a business that's trying to have some kind of exit at the end. So you really have to learn how to, all right, how can I like get real subcontracts that aren't really tied to the 8A designation? Or even better, can I use this program to learn how to write full and open proposals such that we can win prime contracts after this is over? So that's really kind of how we look at it, what our focus areas are, and kind of how we've been able to sustain and grow over the years.
Great, thank you. So Christian, similar question from a different perspective. How have you been able to scale your company without necessarily being dependent on the sole source and set asides that Dale and Karen spoke of earlier?
Yeah, I think what's different for Wovenware is that since we come from commercial, we were not 100% focused on federal. So once we started working with a prime on federal contracts, that allowed us to start working with them directly, not on the federal side, but with them as a company. And then, because that's natural to us to present those capabilities in a way that it's not completely focused on the 8A or the or on the federal side. So I think it's our DNA. It's a little bit, that focus on, most of our work is commercial more than federal. So I think it's a combination of things. So I think that's what I have to say about that.
Great, thank you. We've been talking about 8As as if they are one size fits all and you're all the same, which obviously every organization is different. One distinction I'd like to turn to, and it's a question for Karen and Dale, is around products versus services. Is there a distinction in terms of how an 8A company that's more product focused versus service focused? Is there a distinction in terms of how they engage with the government?
I'll go. I would say no. For the most part, again, if they've got a product or service that they're looking to introduce to the government, the process or the introduction and how they market that product or service would be the same for the most part. If it's a product, and or a service, again, it depends on where the company's at, whether or not they're mature enough to have a GSA, some max type schedule in place through GSA, NASA SOUP, NITEC, or ESI, where they could market it. But for the most part, it's really introducing their product or service to the agency.
Yeah, and I would say I don't notice a huge difference whether it's services or products. From our agency standpoint, I would say we have much more services than we do products. Your products are going to be harder to market because there has to be a specific requirement or mission gap where it's needed, whereas services are usually a little more flexible. So I think you're going to have more success in a service environment.
Karen, is it fair to assume that applies to small business across the board? It's not necessarily unique to 8As?
Yes, absolutely. It applies across the board.
Okay, great. Thank you. We are getting a lot of questions about what am I getting myself into and how do I go forward? So I want to go back to James, something you introduced earlier. What should a startup do before applying for 8A? You had previously talked about timing. But if you were to do it over, right, and give some advice to 8A or to organizations considering entering the 8A program, what would be those criteria that you would set out for someone? Say you probably want to do these few things first, but don't get so far, before you do these other things. How would you get the timing right?
Well, I think one of the most important things is to initially start developing relationships with companies that you want to work with. So you start to develop your technology or your service, and you've got some contracts. You're working. You're doing business, but you're also learning about the agencies that you want to work with. Like, who wants my service? And developing those relationships, such that when you start entering that project, you want people already asking you about, hey, do you have this 8A sort of certification, probably before you even have it. Because if you're sitting there and you go get into the program and then you start figuring out how to use it, it's gonna take, it might take years before you get an 8A contract. I actually found out, over time that, getting the contract wasn't that 8A's particular contract wasn't as valuable to me than just the business development services. So we actually always gone after full and open work. But there are other people who get significant work out of the 8A program itself, but you can use it for many different kinds of things. But if you really want to use that contracting vehicle, you need to have something in place with the relationships where someone wants to use that sole source vehicle. Because everybody, just because you have a sole source vehicle, people aren't walking up to you saying, here's your $4 million, whatever, that's sole source, because we just need to get rid of it. That never happens. Well, it never happens to me, at least. But really what you want to be able to do is have that, those kinds of relationships in place, such that once you're in, like Karen said before, those contracts can start moving. So I think you asked for some specific things, but I was using the number 3. You got 3 customers that you develop those relationships with, and you think that, all right, I think we can do, I'm already doing business with this group. They know our work and they want to do more work with us. And that's a good time to enter.
Great. A couple quick questions, and then we'll go to closing remarks. Karen, a question about programmatics. Does joining the 8A program commit a company to eventually grow out of a program? What if a company wants to stay small? Is that an option, or is there a time frame by which there's a ticking clock?
So the SBA has it set up as a 9-year program. I will tell you, COVID has impacted that, and I've heard that the SBA has extended it a year or so, depending on when you graduate. I'm not sure what the overall implications are going to be, but the idea is at 9 years, you're out. You should have succeeded by that point. I'd like to add on just a second to what James was saying. I would say, know your core capabilities, know who your customers are, have a couple of partners, being both large and small, and really know what you want before you get into the 8A program, and you will have a lot more success than trying to figure it out, wasting time, if you will.
Great, thank you for that. And I know there are some other, please go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, and very quickly, remember that being an 8A company, or a hub zone company for that matter, you're just limiting your competition in a way, right? But there are still 4,000 8A companies and like 4,000 hub zone companies. So you're still competing with a bunch of companies. You still need to do your research, talk to the customer, figure out what the problem is and try to solve it. It's not like you're gonna get handed, like James said, you won't get handed a contract just because you're an 8A. You're still competing with a lot of different people. But it gives an avenue, a different avenue, maybe a smarter or a better avenue for a procurement officer to get to you. But you're still going to have to compete. So have that in mind and think about that a little bit.
Great, thank you. Final question. Oh, go ahead, Dale.
Howard, I'm sorry. If I could just add on to that piece, because I think it's very important. And James, Christian, Karen have all hit on it. Again, I see several companies interested in applying to the 8A program, but yet they're also trying to apply for the mentor protege program. They're trying to apply for other types of things that are out there that could assist them. And as James and Christian highlighted, your focus really should be on the 8A program. Don't let that time waste while you're in it. Maximize the opportunity for the whole 9 years, and don't try focusing on other things. I mean, again, you do definitely have to focus on your company and opportunities, but don't try to do the mentor protege program at the same time. Don't try to, and again, certifications are important, especially CMMC. But those things that are going to help advance your company, you want to focus on, but not try to do too many things while you're in the 8A program. Over.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's great advice. I think it's a great way to close us up today. This has been a great conversation. Thank you to Dale and James and Christian and Karen. I'd like to thank those on the line also for your questions. I know we were not able to get to all the questions, but I appreciate you making this a rich discussion. I also want to remind everyone about the 8A National Security Showcase on June 8th and 9th that Suzanne mentioned up front. This will be a virtual event that's the opportunity for 8A businesses to market their innovative national security technologies, applications, and services to procurement representatives from prime contractors and across IC agencies. Any 8A business with innovative national security products or services is invited to apply to present at the showcase. 20-25 companies will be selected to participate in the showcase, where they will deliver Shark Tank style presentations to key public and private sector decision makers. And ultimately, INSA is looking to build awareness, build relationships, and ultimately build a stronger, more diverse, and more resilient community. More details, including the application form, can be found on INSA's website, insaonline.org, as well as in the document library on the right side of your screen. We're going to pass it back to INSA's president, Suzanne WilsonHeckenberger, to wrap us up.
Thank you, Howard. And I want to thank all of our panelists, both from the public and private sectors, for contributing to this very informative and important conversation today. I also wanted to mention that the showcase that Howard is referring to, the submission deadline is close of business on Wednesday, March 31st. And you can go to www.insaonline.org to get further details. Looking ahead quickly, tomorrow afternoon, Dave Frederick, who is the Executive Director of U.S. Cyber Command, will join us for our Wednesday Wisdom. And then next Tuesday, March 16th, the Coast Guard's Assistant Commandant for Intelligence, Rear Admiral Andrew Sugimoto, will join us for coffee and conversation. Again, more details can be found on our website. When the webinar ends, there will be a short survey that pops up on your screen. Please take a few moments to complete us and let us know how we are doing. This concludes today's program. Stay safe and healthy. Have a good afternoon and get out and enjoy some sunshine if you can. Thank you.